Aloha everyone, Kristina here, and I am so happy to share a very special guest with you today. I've got Dr. Brian Clement with me. And believe it or not, I'm actually in Florida right now. My parents were very excited to do their wellness program here. So I flew out to support them and to see the program, to witness the campus and more. And I just have to say, I'm just so blown away with Hippocrates, and I have nothing but amazing and wonderful things to say. The program is fantastic and so comprehensive. The people are so kind, the food is delicious, the campus is beautiful, and I've even gotten to attend some of Brian's lectures here, and I've been absolutely blown away with his expertise and knowledge on not just raw foods, but so much more. Cancer, diabetes, everything lifestyle related. And of course I had to ask him to come on and to share his knowledge with you, because what a special treat it is to have you sitting here with me. So I feel so grateful and so excited to share him with you today. And I just have to say, I'm so happy to be here. My parents are so happy to be here, and this has just been such a lovely experience.
Well, we're happy to welcome you. You bring joy and light into the Institute.
Thank you. And can I also just say, it is so cool to sit with you, because you have been such a pioneer in the raw vegan movement. You have created so many of the things that those of us who've been on YouTube for a while have been talking about forever, but you're one of those who's spearheaded it. You've created it, you've pioneered this movement in so many different ways, and you have an institute here in Florida called Hippocrates, and you have a comprehensive raw food program. People can come and stay here and eat raw food and heal, and you have it for multiple different programs, which is fantastic. And something I've learned about you since I've been here, because I've been just meeting him and he's so cool, is
I don't know about
you are an expert on cancer and raw food.
Yes.
Right? And we all know that cancer is such a devastating thing, and it can also be it is a sensitive topic for many. And although we're not going to be talking today about how to cure cancer, I do want to ask Brian, how did you get into the topic of cancer and raw food and becoming such an expert on it?
Well, thanks for the accolades. And I've been blessed as you've been blessed because we're part of a legacy. And the first generation back in the beginning of the 20th century were people like Anne Wigmore. Some of the people I looked up to at that point were Paul Bragg and my wonderful friend, Dr. Jensen. And I studied with Dr. John Christopher. And they were really the pioneers, and we sort of adapted what they did and brought it into the 21st century, as you have. And it's a generational thing. I think what people have to understand is that the way that we work as a human species is we take a torch, and hopefully we keep it bright, and hopefully we keep it shining, and so it lights the way for the next generation and we hand it over. And you've done a wonderful job to do that, and to bring it to the masses. And I think that's important. So Anne Wigmore was diagnosed with cancer by the Harvard doctors in 1950 and was told within 1 hour, you're going to die.
Oh my gosh.
You have 3 months to live. And you know, she's not with the guys in the second layer. These are the top doctors arguably in the world, if not the United States. And so rather than go home and die, as most people would do because the authorities predicted that, she went home and got angry. And she remembered as she was growing up as a peasant girl in Lithuania, Eastern Europe, that her grandmom, the village doctor, would heal people with herbs and food and love. And she did it, and 1956 couldn't hold it back. No education, didn't even get out of high school. In the shadow of Harvard, MIT, you could see MIT out of the window of Hippocrates. Down the street was Tufts University, Boston College, some of the great institutions here in this country. And she said, well, maybe what they're telling you is not always exactly correct. That I was told I had 90 days to live 6 years ago, and I'm alive today. And so I stepped back from taking credit for that. So I took that mantle, and in 1980, they asked my wife Anna Marie and I to become directors. And I was so filled with vinegar then. I actually thought that we single-handedly, because of how effective this lifestyle is, this program could eradicate cancer. And sadly, we've lost that battle. We've lost that battle. Now we're winning wars. In the war, we're winning little skirmishes. But when I got inspired to go into this field in the 1970s, early 1970s, my mentor said, do you realize 1 out of 8 Americans are going to have cancer? That was appalling to me. I didn't know much, but I could count.
I think the stat now is 1 out of every 3 people have
well,
it.
50% of the people alive will have some form of cancer. So people who are born and people who are 80, somebody is going to have cancer, about 50% or more. So we now see that the fastest growing cancer in history is with young people your age and younger, and it's colorectal cancer because of lifestyle and diet. And there's no question in any sensible scientist's mind, or somebody like me that has over half a century of work with 300,000 people, but 180,000 of them have had cancer, is that's diet, and that's lifestyle, and that's meat, and that's dairy. And there's no question in any sensible person's mind. Anyone that would deny that is completely with their head under the sand and haven't bothered to read any data from the major universities anywhere in the world. Number 2, we see things like brain cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer skyrocket since cell towers were installed, and we are hooked on cell phones. As a matter of fact, 57% of us with cell phones are addicted to it, meaning we can't stop using them. We have testicular cancer because the young men stick it in their pocket, and that's skyrocketing. That was so rare in the 1970s and 80s. With women your age, somehow they think their brasiers are no longer for bosoms, but to put the cell phone in. There's a new form of cancer that Stanford and the University of California actually diagnosed initially, and the docs off script call it the LG cancer, the Samsung cancer, the Apple cancer, because it's literally in the shape of the battery of the phone. And so how can you deny it? How can you deny this? So why are we interested in cancer? Because it's a plague. This is the real pandemic. This is really what we have to focus in on. And it can be halted and stopped as we've done here for 70 years. Anne was the one who showed us we could do that. And now we've had thousands and thousands of people. You've met some on this campus as you speak in the same program you and your family are in. There's 4 people who were told they were going to die from 20 years to 12 years ago who are now flourishing and thriving and healthy as can be. Matter of fact, one told me the other day the best thing that ever happened, they had cancer, so now they're healthy.
It can be a journey, and I do believe we're in a day and age where, when we were younger, it was, when you heard about someone who had cancer, it was like
shocking.
It was shocking. It was like, oh my gosh, that person has it. But now in 2025, we all know someone who has cancer.
Yeah.
It's someone's mom, it's someone's dad, it's someone's sister. It's devastating.
If you don't watch out, it's going to be you. And it's not just about eating processed and heavy cooked vegan diets and things that make you feel good. It's about eating healthy raw food that has the enzymes. There's 4 things I discovered over the years that really make the raw food uniquely different to any other food. Number 1, it has hormones in it. These are the language carriers throughout the body, so your cells communicate well. Oxygen. Way back at the beginning of the 20th century, a German scientist won a Nobel Prize by showing us you can't even ingest a nutrient, a vitamin, a protein, into your cell without that oxygen being there. And we forgot that. The most important, it actually taught us why this has worked for so long so effectively. And that's phytochemicals. Now this is a beautiful story. This is the universe, if you will, God, if you will, basically instilled within raw plant foods medicines that reverse and prevent cancers and every other disease. And last are enzymes. you know, about enzymes. They are really the electric charge in your body. And as you know, you attended my class, my latest book talks about that and gives you the science on it. This is no longer speculation. I'm just patient and waiting for the science community to step up to where science really is. Even in this community, we're still talking about 1960, 1970 science. We shouldn't be there. And why we're not getting healthy and why we're not staying vital like you and why we're not staying young is people have to get to the basics. It's not about the shiny objects, it's about the basic hard work of committing yourself to a lifestyle that you're supposed to, that every other creature on earth has committed themselves to.
Absolutely.
Every creature, 8 billion species, eat a raw diet. The only one that does not is human species. Who's the sickest species? We are dying. We are sick. We are mentally sick, not only physically sick. We have wars, hatred, racism, sexism. What do you think that's about? You don't think diet has part to do that?
Absolutely. And I just want to add to that, you know, even though we're talking about cancer, this applies to everyone, right? What we're really talking about is prevention, because, you know, some of you watching this right now might say, oh, I don't have cancer, this doesn't apply to me, you know. But the truth is we can all be doing something to constantly be building our immunity and to be living healthfully, because it really is all about prevention, right? And I mean, prevention is not about like stopping things from happening. It's about vitality. It's about longevity. It's about really stepping into the fullness of life and the quality of life that you have and feeling amazing all the time, right? And something that I've learned here, because, you know, my parents are in the wellness program, and the programs do, you know, the schedules overlap, right? So you can attend a lot of different things. It's not that the cancer program is super isolated or anything. It's more so about everyone is here to learn and to get healthy. The educational component is fantastic. His lecture was mind-blowing. I was so excited about it. I nerded out. And also, it really is about everyone learning and becoming their healthiest self, right?
It is, and I think you said it so well. Can you imagine if you can heal a disease that almost nobody ever heals, cancer? What does that do for your lifespan? Easy things. I mean, I'm so proud of you. You were eating a typical American junk diet.
I was eating a typical Lebanese diet.
Which is even better than an American junk diet.
I know, I don't know about that.
And how old were you when they told you you had type 2 diabetes?
14. From 14 to 16 is when it got bad, yeah. Oh. And it was so many drastic changes in my body, but I pretty much grew up on meat and olive oil.
Right.
Yeah, that was
on the sticks? Meat on the sticks?
Unfortunately, yeah.
What's that about? I have never figured it out.
Kebab, you know, kibinaya, all the things. And, you know, there are some parts of the Mediterranean diet that are healthy. The fattoush, the tabbouleh, all those things. But hummus, yeah. I really, though, is you grew up eating a lot of olive oil and a lot of meat. And, you know, it impacted me at such a young age.
Yeah, can you imagine? Here you are, a 14-year-old girl. Most of us are at that point waking up, or hormones are coming alive, and you're told that you have a disease, that your eyesight would eventually go. You'd have neuropathy.
I was told that I was going to live with diabetes for the rest of my life.
Of course, it's a chronic disease, which is a joke. I've never worked with a type 2 diabetic that doesn't make themselves well. Yeah. It's just nuts. I mean, to make these stories up that are untrue and to create a billion-dollar institution or billions of dollars institution, to me is unbelievably wrong.
Right. And so I found raw foods when I was 18, and I went raw vegan in one night. And
you were at university then?
I was actually no, I was in my last year of high school.
Wow, you were way ahead of time.
I was really a rebel. Everyone else was out partying, drinking alcohol.
You grew up in Texas, right?
I grew up in Texas.
Well, they were on barbecue and you were having salad.
Oh, I have so many stories you don't even know. I was definitely that weird girl walking around.
Well, you're part of our tribe.
You know what? I've always just been in alignment with myself and beat to my own drum, and I feel so much better being myself. Yeah. And it took me 1.5 years to just naturally reverse my diabetes with just raw food, no meds. Slowly weaned myself off the meds, the insulin, everything, and just took 1.5 years. And all I did was eat raw food.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, you know, once you give the body what it needs, it responds. All a disorder is a disease, no matter what the name of the disease is the body waking you up and saying, hey, something's wrong with what you're doing. And diet is pinnacle. It's not everything, but it's certainly pinnacle. And I can tell you, in your lifestyle, you shared a little bit with me, you're doing the things we teach everyone to do here. You're outside, you're getting sun, you're exercising, you're impassioned. You're not impassioned, none of the rest works. I mean, come on, you're having fun.
Are you kidding? People ask me all the time because July 15th is my 20-year raw vegan anniversary. It's so exciting. Well, everybody's always asking me, aren't you bored of eating all the salad and the fruit? And I'm like, are you kidding? I was like, I'm more passionate about this lifestyle now than I was in the beginning, and I was on fire in the beginning. Yeah. But now, after having lived it and seeing how it can heal people and the changes it can create in a person's life and impact them, I'm just like, we need this now more than ever because the world is becoming sicker than ever. We need this now more than ever.
It's true. It's true.
I'm lit up. I get so grateful. I live in Hawaii now. I grow my own food. There's nothing more exciting to me than going and picking my own food or going to the farmer's market and then coming home and just laying all the colors out, seeing the life force of the food, and then making the food. I'm just so grateful.
Well, we call it, we now have a science. We used to think this was sort of esoteric, that we call it historic and ancestral DNA. And each and every one of you came from nomads and most recently farmers. So why you're feeling fulfilled in that love is it's your genes. And when you have control over your food, you're not worried. Is the store closed? Do I have money? Will my credit card be too much on this one? You're taking care, self-sustainability. And this is how our oldest ancestors lived. And what freedom that brings you. And if the world shut down, as it did recently, you can see how easy it is to shut the world down. You basically didn't care. You could have hung out there forever, 150 years, and been totally nourished, totally happy, and not stressed. Wake up, people. And you can do this in your apartments. You can do it with sprouts. You don't have to have Hawaiian land and grow trees.
They know all about sprouts. I talk about sprouts. We're working on sprouts, right? We're getting people there. But you know what I have to say, what you're saying is so true. I don't think I told you this, but my great-grandfather on my dad's side had a sugarcane mill and farm in Ecuador.
Wow.
So my dad, you'll have to tell him about this later, but he grew up on a sugarcane plantation.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, so my dad actually helped me plant the sugarcane that's on my property now.
He came over to do that?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Brought it full circle, and what was really cool about it was when we were planting the sugarcane, someone who came by to tell us about it was like, oh yeah, this originally came from Ecuador and we planted it in Hawaii.
Isn't that amazing?
And my dad almost started crying and I was like, oh! But even then, on my mom's side of the family, which is Lebanese, my ancestors, not even 2 generations ago, but they sold fruits and vegetables on the street in Lebanon. That's what they did, is they were,
And you did that initially, didn't
sellers.
You made a business where you did that.
I did, and I didn't know any of that, and the first 11 years of my real career where I created a co-op in Houston, which was called Rawfully Organic, and it was a chain of farmers markets in the city. And for a long period of time, it was the largest organic co-op in the US.
No kidding, yeah. Boy, I'm proud of you. I didn't know that.
It closed down in 2016. But up until then, yeah, we had over like 60,000 members in the Houston area who'd come and pick up a box of produce every week.
You were the real pharmacist.
So, I would go to sleep at night envisioning everybody walking away with boxes of light. I loved it.
Isn't that
being around produce makes me so happy.
Say that again, Love. I love that image. Boxes of what?
Of light.
Light, and because that's what's in this living food. Yeah. Once you cook it, the light goes out, and by the way, your light goes out.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we're talking about food here, but it's really more than just about food, right? We've got the physical component of how it makes you feel. We've got the mental component of the work that happens when you cleanse your body. We've got the emotional component, which you guys teach so much here, is cleansing the emotional state is really a form of healing, a very powerful form of healing. And also, if you're welcome to it, is the spiritual component of eating living foods, which is next level in so many cool ways.
It is. Well, what people don't realize, when I was struggling, remember, I was on a very conventional diet as you were, and I was struggling to stick to it. Yes, the summer of 1969, I became a vegan, And then I would slip, for 3 years I would, go for 2 months and then eat a gallon of ice cream. And then I got sick from eating ice cream, so I stopped. I wasn't strong enough to quit. Thus my body became so frequency high, filled with what you just said, light, that it couldn't take it anymore. And that's where it all began. But the truth of the matter is, if I only knew what I know now, that you've got to change your mind and then you'll change your diet. So all of you slipping back, you've got to do work on the head. I said, it's head first, and we want a happy head, an HH. And if you have a happy head, you're not going to want to hurt yourself. You're going to nourish yourself, build yourself. Look at you, look at how youthful you are. You look like you're 18 years old.
I feel 18.
Yeah, of course you do, honestly.
Thank you.
It's not about looks, it's about vitality. When I sit next to her, she vibrates energy. And I'm not a new age whack job, I'm a scientist. She's vibrating energy. And why? Because that's what you should be doing. Not struggling about this and saying, gee, that was an interesting tape I watched, but let's go out and eat, burgers that are not meat. That's not the answer. Now, if you eat that occasionally, it's not the end of the world, providing you're not sick. But the truth of the matter is, living food, come back to life, that will also provoke consciousness, not because we think so, we know so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And living foods, if we're talking about mental health, they really are foods that love you back.
Exactly.
And I've told a lot of people, even if you don't love yourself now, if you hate yourself, which is a very strong word, and many people do find themselves unhappy in their body and their lives and more, it's such a forgiving food and there's so much life in it. It's hard to not love yourself after a period of time when just doing one raw vegan meal a day.
Yeah.
Like it loves you back on such a deep level. It is a part of the healing journey.
Exactly. And let's address young women, because I have 2 daughters and several granddaughters now. And we have this, iconic view of what a girl and then a woman should be in our society, and you beat yourself up. And, the image we have is you have to be thin and vital and sexy and youthful until you're 100 years old. And if you don't, by the way, love yourself, that's impossible. She didn't try to do that. She doesn't get in front of a mirror and say, I want to look better. She just does what it takes. Loving herself enough. And I'm sure she didn't love herself enough. At 14, 15, 16 to have diabetes, she probably said, what's wrong with me? Why did God do this to me? I'm positive of that. But she grew beyond that. And you can too. There's nobody who's not capable of living at the highest level, because the greatest gift you've ever been given is your life. And just take a credit for that.
Oh, that's so beautifully said.
Yeah, well, it's true.
And we all have our insecurities, right? And we all are struggling with things, but it is a journey to self-love.
It is a journey.
Right? And also, people get wrapped up in the physique of it. Most people are like, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to look this way. But the truth is when you just focus on becoming a better person and feeling better, all those other things naturally fall into place.
You conform to your form once you understand where the form is. And the form is not really in physical, the form is in spiritual and emotional.
Yes.
That's it.
And you have to put in the work too.
Yeah.
You have to.
But do you really consider it work? You and I laughed about it.
No, I have so much fun. Are you kidding? It's for someone who has to learn the language in the beginning, it is a little work in the beginning. But then it's like once you speak the language, it's like learning English, Spanish. Once you speak it, it's effortless, and then you have fun conversing, right? You have fun conversing with the food, preparing the food. In the beginning, yes, it's a little extra effort to learn it, but then it's fun.
Yeah, well, the language you've learned is a language that's dying, I can tell you. It's a language of intense dependency, and we're dependent upon everything. I was over in England speaking about 5 years ago, and they showed that if England didn't have food shipped in within 2 weeks, hunger would start. So that shows you how isolated we get. England was an agricultural country at one point. The United States, by the way, at this point, probably would have a similar problem, maybe even more so, because we have 330 million people as we speak, living in the constraints of 49 states. Your state's uniquely different. And so the fact of the matter is, we have a situation today where independence is not only going to make you well, make you healthy, and make you a human being that's so strong and so much representative of what everyone else should be, your family members. If you really love people, love yourself, and they're going to be loved by the fact that they can look at you as a guide. And we need people today who are clear, concise, definitive, and they're not wavering, and they're not changing back and forth. People are blowing with the wind. Why? Because they're insecure, they don't know who they are, and they're not committed to anything that really matters in their life. Everything is glitz. You know, most of the people in your YouTube world are shallow. You're one of the deep ones in that world. I mean, I can't, and I'm not going to name any names, but there's a group of young ladies that are sisters out in California that became billionaires by being ignorant. Now, to me, this doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. It's a generational thing. Why? Because today, if our iconic people say nothing, do nothing, and mean nothing, and commit to nothing, no wonder the younger kids today know nothing and feel nothing and do nothing. And so it's a difficult thing. What you're saying is, let's go back, not to nature, let's go back to what the gift was we were given, and honor our bodies, and honor our minds, and honor our society. And when we do that, my God, the rewards come immediately.
Yes, yes, and what I'm hearing you say is truly the definition of health freedom.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Right, like real health freedom on every level.
And what other freedom is more important? None. There's no other freedom. You could want anything, you could have money, you could have material good. If you don't have health, you have zero.
So I just grabbed your book here, his new book, Quantum Human, which, by the way, he signed a copy for me. I was so excited about it. It's an incredible book, and I attended his presentation on it a few days ago where he talked about the light in food, and he showed studies, right? And he showed the science behind life force in food and the biophotons and more, and just, oh my gosh, can you tell us a little bit more about what this book is about? Because it's such a gift to people.
Well, I appreciate you saying, yeah, most books I accomplished in a couple of years. This is my 35th book with Anna Marie and I. And
oh, hold on, pause. 35th book. Just take that in for a minute. All the books that are sitting behind us are his, and I'm gonna have to go home with like a big stack of books.
I appreciate that. But I began this on the hills in Malibu with one of my close friends, Dr. Valerie Hunt, who was an extraordinary professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, that before I was born, and as a matter of fact, much before that, in the 1930s, 1940s, was speaking about biofrequency fields in people and food and how that interacts. And so I starting to write this with her, and she passed on at 98, and I paused for a minute about 8 years ago. And 8 years later, the book came out, so a total of 10 years. And the reason being is that I wanted to make this a book that brings all of science and scientists and health to a totally different place, a totally different level. What we're doing is rehashing old information. And let's be honest, even in the progressive doctors, they're doing that. Talking about things on a physical basis. That's 1970 information. It's not 2025 information. We are biofrequency fields. Now let's talk about the dietary end of this. At UCLA, back in 1981, one of my good buddies, Dr. Rick Ricketts, who helped to build the School of Dentistry there in Los Angeles, called and said, let's do a photographic expose on foods with the Russian scientist who was in residence there for that period of time. And she was renowned for this. As a matter of fact, was considered for a Nobel Prize on it. And we did it. And on one end of the scale, we put the living food, and the highest frequency of those foods are things like sprouts. And if you had a fruit growing on a tree, it would be there too. And if you had grass and weeds, it would be there too. And it was amazing. We actually were measuring frequencies 2 feet. That's 2 feet, people, in every direction. So here's the food, 2 feet this way, 2 feet every way. And the colors were representative. I didn't understand them, but Dr. Hunt interpreted them for me. She said, it's gold, it's purple, and white. And if you know anything about religion, which has unfortunately been corrupted, at one point it wasn't. That the holy days, which come in the spring, around the time we're sitting here talking now,
What
were the colors they used?
Purple,
gold,
yellow, yeah.
That's right.
White,
So,
yeah. Which is supposed to be Easter,
exactly.
colors, the coming of Christ.
And the rebirth,
right.
Life and generation. And on the other end, sadly, we did it to see the results. We put meat. So we put uncooked meat. I hate the word raw meat, there's no such thing. Once an animal carcass is laying there, it's decomposing. So it's not alive. If I put an EKG machine on it, it literally has no life in it. And so when you take it into your body, and most people do not take it into their body raw, and you ought not to, is basically it detracts your energy. Not because we think so, we have photographic exposés on this. So when you consume such an unhuman or non-human food, you're literally draining energy out of your body. The way most people consume that is cook it. And so that you know the data on this, most of you are buying meat that was grown at a ranch 6 months ago. And then it was frozen, then you take it and you cook it. It actually pulls energy in to the meat. So now you're even having a higher level of energy detracted from your body. And now mainstream science will tell you clearly, which is absolutely true, the people who live the longest do not consume those foods. And we don't have a few examples, we have every single example we've looked at throughout the entire planet. So anyone that would like to challenge me on that, come, and I'll have that talk with you and have that debate with you. Number two, dairy food. I mean, one of the things I kept slipping back to, because I was a heavy meat eater. I wasn't one of these, indigo children that were born not liking meat. I was on the other side, in the dark. And I was eating meat the day I gave it up. But dairy, I kept thinking to myself, well, I'm not killing the animal, we're just sort of milking it a little bit. Now, we really woke up, thank God I'd given it up by 72, 73, all animal foods. My good buddy, Dr. Campbell, came out and said, I've been looking at this stuff for decades, and if you don't know who Dr. Colin Campbell is, no question, he's the most important living nutritional scientist. And what I love about Dr. Campbell, he's an incredibly sophisticated and honest, candid scientist. He doesn't have opinions, he creates science and follows the science of it. A lot of people talk about following the science, but they have prejudice. He doesn't. And he came out and told all of us in the very late 80s that out of all foods that people consume, the #1 cause of cancer is dairy food. And why? It's casein, the protein, 87% of the protein in it. So anyone that today would think that a carnivore diet is good, they are completely off the deep end. They're detracting from their own energy. Those people come in here, unlike other people, they have opinions about things. I'm a clinician. I'm sitting here with people coming in from, right now we have people here from 7 countries on the campus, and they come here sick when they try these pop culture ideologies, and that's all it is.
I just have to say, I was thinking about this the whole time when you were talking, is the carnivore diet is such a popular thing right now. It's all over the internet, and you hit it right on the head. I wanted to ask you about it anyway, so I'm so glad you touched on it, because so many people have transitioned to carnivore. And
how do you backward? I mean, that's like
it's a very strange thing to see online. In honesty, and in my personal opinion, it's been so disappointing for me, just because I'm looking at it from many aspects. I'm looking at it from the aspect of the health of a person, the ethos and the ethics of the animals, the environment. I'm looking at it from the full picture, and also, everything that you're saying is in alignment. And I just want to say, I've met a few people here who've become very sick from doing carnivore, and now they're here trying to get well.
Of course. We're not here to criticize anyone. I can tell you, it's very hard for me not to like you. Adolf Hitler's on that list of few people. But the fact is that it's not you're a bad person, you're making bad choices, bad decisions for yourself, for your family, for the planet, for the human race. And if you think you need violence to sustain life, there's something seriously wrong with that. And I don't know where that comes from, I really don't. I know I was a very violent young man. In my generation, that's what we did. And the fact is, what changed me is when I went to the diet, I didn't really work at all on my mind at that. I thought that was for sissies, to be honest with you. And the fact is, the lifestyle alone opened up my eyes, awoke me to things I never thought about. My sensitivity, my masculinity, which was over the top, became balanced at that point. I didn't become less of a man, I became more of a man. And what we know is with animal foods, you feminize men and you masculate women, not because we think so. What do you think are in these animals? They're estrogenic. And not only do they take a man feminine, but they take a woman masculine, because when a woman has so much of this in her body, what happens? The testosterone levels go up. So look in cultures where they consume a lot of meat. They're growing hair on their face. They literally have an out of control emotional state comparatively. Where's the most violence? Where's the most rape? In the countries that consume the most animal-based foods. There was a study done of all states in Georgia 30, 40 years ago, where somebody very wise there went into the jails, and 5 years before the men were to be released, they put them on not a great diet, but a vegetarian diet, a little dairy and then plants. How few came back was shocking. Like 82% of them didn't show back where they normally would have.
Wow.
It wasn't even permanent changes in the right direction. So people, don't get caught up in the latest trends. Think with common sense. And those of you that were eating healthy, and you say you transition to something that goes backwards, that's not a transition, that's a loss. That's a loss for you and for the human race.
Brilliantly said. Could you also maybe touch on a lot of the people who have changed? They have benefit for a while and they'll say, oh, I started eating meat, and I'm not just talking about meat. A lot of the carnivore diet and what's trending on the internet is people are eating boards of steak with sticks of butter on it. And they're like, oh, you won't poop for you won't poop for a few days and you're gonna end up feeling better. Studies have shown that an increased take of meat and also margarine and fat can actually lead to cardiovascular disease and more, right?
Well,
so
more, I mean, that's the nicest disease you get.
I'm giving the most basic information we know, but also I think the confusing thing for people is they'll be like, oh, I feel so good when I do it, but can you maybe explain why in the long term it is not beneficial or could potentially hurt your health?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a voyage so that we get some history on this. One of my colleagues who angered me because he was one of the smartest men I ever met. He had a photographic memory. It was called Dr. Atkins. And back in the 70s, I had an office, early 80s in New York, and we got to know each other fairly well. And I was on his radio program, and before we would go on air and I spent minutes with him, I would say, why are you telling people to do this? And the only response he had is that people lose weight. So after that was analyzed by the big institutions like Harvard, they showed, yes, you lose weight not because it's making you lose weight, because you give up the donuts, you give up the pasta, you give up the processed carbohydrates. But in a year and a half, the disease rates skyrocketed. As you pointed out, heart disease, which is...
It's just one. It's just one.
Diabetes is number one. So you say, how do people get diabetes? She was eating so much meat. As a little girl, at 14 years old, she got diabetes. It's not sugar first. It's that your cells require glucose from plants.
Yes.
Every plant has glucose in. If my cell is smothered with fat, what cannot go into the mouth of the cell? And so it stays in the blood, and it's called blood sugar disease. That's what it is. If you look at cancer, outrageous differences. Now, why would this institute have more people reverse cancer than any institute in the history of the human race? It's because we take them off the very things that gave them cancer, and notably, they are meat. In our latest books, we're talking about how you burn meat the way I used to like it. I used to like the fat and the burned and the charcoal and all of this stuff. It actually amplifies so much the cancer, it's 4 or 5 times higher incidence. So, I mean, and how you feel better is they must have been on a junk food vegan diet. That's simple. And a junk food vegan diet's better than a Western diet, but the fact is you're on a junk food diet and your blood sugar is going like that, and you stop the blood sugar, you have a honeymoon period. But just like the Atkins studies at universities, look all of this up, people. There's nothing I ever have to make up because the data's there. You'll see you're gonna end up sick, and you're gonna end up aging prematurely, and you're gonna end up sorry that you ever made such a bad decision because it was popular at the time.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And also, I just want to tell people, I didn't grow up eating a lot of fruit. I didn't grow up eating a lot of junk food. We had homemade Lebanese meals every night in my house. And when my dad made dinner, it was meat. It was chicken and rice and beans, typical Latino meal, right? So that did give me diabetes. I'm very convinced that a high meat, high fat diet gave me diabetes. And the first 10 years of my raw vegan journey, I was fruitarian. How does someone reverse diabetes just eating fruit?
You can.
Now, but even further to that, you mentioned Atkins, so I just want to say this. Throughout the years, we've seen so many popular diets, and it's almost like I've seen Atkins be repackaged and sold as something differently every time.
Absolutely.
And yes, like Atkins, keto, they're kind of very similar, almost the same, but it's almost like when somebody does do something that changes it up a bit, or you're putting your body into a state of ketosis, you do feel better for a little bit. But I believe that they have done studies. I can't cite one right now. I think Dr. Garth Davis posted one on his Instagram.
Yes.
And they have shown that keto diets long-term actually can be very harmful.
Well, let's explain keto. So yeah. I read science perpetually. It's sort of like I'm a real nerd when it comes to that. And what I do is I accumulate people I like the most, and out of 15, 20 people, I invite them here, and 8 or 9 or 10 show up. And we have little conferences where we all get in a room. There's no other people in the room. It's just the top people in their field. And about 7, 8 years ago, I had the people who reintroduced the ketogenic diet. Really nice people. The young nutritional scientist, as a PhD like me, was about your age. She was with a woman who was older, who was about my age now, and her husband was getting dementia, so they put them on a high-fat diet, and as any fat would help, it helped. And by the end of the 3 days, it was I love these conferences because these people are being scrutinized by their colleagues. Their tenure at universities are being challenged, so they're going against the grain. So these are not bad people trying to do bad things. And they said to me, the modern purveyors, not the salespeople who are selling ketogenic, but the modern purveyors, we could do the ketogenic diet perfectly on a raw food.
I believe that.
Of course.
I believe that. But ketogenic with just meat is a different story.
Well, of course it is.
It's a different story.
Well, there's no such thing. Let me tell you the most poignant conversation. Before his death, he died very young, by the way, Dr. Atkins. I said, listen, are you doing this because it's easy to get people to adhere? He said, absolutely. And what that answered was absolutely money. That's it. So if I come to you and tell you to do exactly what you want to do, and I'm an authority, isn't that a great sale?
I mean, what's so funny about that is all we're asking people to do is to eat whole, fresh, ripe, organic.
And there's debate.
Fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, and yet it's one of the hardest things for people to do.
Yeah,
it's much easier to do the other thing.
It's easier because you're used to it, you're habitual with it, and it creates such a low consciousness. This is it. I'm going to do the punchline now. Such a low consciousness. You feel and think like everyone else. And once you unplug that and you're raised to the human level of consciousness, not a superhuman level. Nobody's exceptionally conscious. You're either conscious or unconscious. It's a switch. Then what happens, you feel very awkward in a society of unconscious people. So what these people are doing, I'm positive, is going back to the unconscious because they feel I'm part of a tribe now that's larger.
It's a state of comfort.
Exactly.
Right? But if we're talking about consciousness, the most basic thing I can share is this. If you're going to eat something that is dead,
yes,
how are you going to feel alive, right? And meat is death.
Well,
right?
One of the oldest slogans or sayings in the world is life begets life, death begets death. You can't change that. That's 1 and 1 makes 2, or 1 minus 1 makes 0. Right. That's it. That's the story.
Amazing. I love it.
Yes.
Is there anything else you'd want to cover?
Well, I just want to congratulate you for what you're doing and how we can get out to the world. And anytime we can help, I'm there for you to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I just have to say it has been such a pleasure and an honor to have Dr. Brian Clement here on my channel. Oh my gosh. I'm just so honored. This has been such a fantastic conversation. I'm gonna save it and share it with everyone I know. And I also just want to say I'm having a wonderful time at Hippocrates. My parents really wanted to come here and experience what it was like, and they're having a fantastic time. And so for those of you who don't know who Dr. Brian Clement is, which I think you probably all might know who he is by now, I want to go ahead and I'm going to link his new book below so you can check it out. I'll also link Hippocrates below, so for those of you who are interested, can check out Hippocrates as well. And let's all give him a big thumbs up on the video for being here, and just some wonderful comments and support for him coming on today. If you've liked it, please let us know in the comments. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Dr. Clement. Thank you.
Take care.
I know. Bye, everyone.